she's going to join us this morning. Good morning. How are you, Mayor? Good to be with you. Mayor Bottoms, we've been watching you. We're your neighbors to the north. And we've been watching you and what you've been going through. And first, I hope you're feeling well, and I hope your family is feeling well. On top of everything, you have to be dealing with the COVID virus yourself. Then you have your hands more than full there. You have not only the COVID virus, but the other virus of racism and division, and what was going on with Mr. Brooks. But we just want to tell you on behalf of New Yorkers, after what we've gone through, that you are exactly right, Mayor, what you are saying and what you are advocating. You know, it's no longer a question of theory or a question of politics. We have facts. We have data. We went through it here in New York. We went through it in a worst-case scenario. And it is about following the data and following the science and taking the precautions and doing what's right. It is about masks. Masks work. We can tell you that here in New York. We had the worst spike per capita on the globe, and we brought it down. And now you see these other states are going higher than New York. So those masks work. We were the first state to start mandatory masks April 15th. And all the science now says for sure masks make a big difference. One of the models last week, the IHME model, the Gates-funded model that the White House uses, actually projected 40,000 more Americans will die if we don't have a national mask policy. So it's clear. But we just wanted to tell you that we feel for you. We are all one. We're one community. I applaud your leadership. You really get to see what an elected official is made of when the pressure is on. And you have more than risen to the occasion. You've been inspired. You the rising star, and they are all correct. And we are with you. Anything we can do for you or the city, we stand ready. We remember how good the people across this country were to us. When we were in the midst of it, I asked for volunteers from across the United States, nurses, doctors, to come help in our hospitals. 30,000 people volunteered to come to New York in the midst of it and work in our hospitals. It was such an act of generosity and love. That was really touching. So we're here for you. The concept of pay forward, whatever we can do on any level. We have people who've been through this and actually know, and we stand ready. But you're right. Keep going. Stay strong. The facts will bear out about saving lives, and you're doing exactly the right thing. And the numbers are going to show that. Mayor?
In the dark, all is laid bare.
Across the country. And at the beginning of this pandemic, my part to my team was simple: God bless you, shall be satisfied. And I had no idea that we would have to go it alone in so many ways. I thought that it was more geared towards the lack of leadership we had at the federal level, but it has proven to be equally challenging at the statewide level. And my family is an example of what's happening across this country. We had an asymptomatic child in our home for 8 days before we knew that child was asymptomatic. And by that time, my husband and I had contracted COVID unnecessarily, I would imagine, because we would have taken precautions to protect ourselves. Thankfully, by the grace of God, we don't have underlying health conditions, and we are all on the mend. My husband is feeling a lot better, but for so many people across this country, that is not their story, and their outcome is so very different. So in Atlanta, when we saw that we were in a very different place than the governor's
Evil
leadership was
lurks
taking
around
us,
every corner.
we convened an advisory committee in our city comprised of health experts, small business owners, Fortune 500 representatives, colleges and universities, just really a representation of our community. And they made some very clear recommendations on where we needed to go with reopening, a phased approach. We had made it into the second
Dark
phase,
should give me.
but given where we are, our ICU bed capacity is maxed out in some hospitals by the day. We're getting closer to maxing out in others. Our numbers are ticking up. I look at the numbers daily. I am seeing numbers that I have not seen since April. As
There
of
will be
yesterday
death.
afternoon, we were up almost 23% over a week's uh, period of time. We're headed in the wrong direction. So as a city, we've recommended that we go back to phase one, which is essentially a stay-at-home order. Also, we've instituted a mask mandate. The benefit of that is one, us taking a very clear position as a city that we recognize that wearing masks helps save lives, but also even in the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport, one of our largest job centers, we can also mandate masks there as well. And it's very simple. Unless we have a coordinated approach across this country, we are going to continue to unnecessarily watch people die. And what makes it even more frustrating and even more disappointing, we didn't have to look to
I
Italy. We
hear the
could look to New York, and you told us very clearly that if we didn't do things differently in our cities and states, we would find ourselves in the same situation that New York was facing. And unfortunately, you were correct because throughout the South, especially, we are getting there in rapid order. And so I thank you for your leadership. I know that as a city, in the same way New York was able to get to the other side, I know that we will get to the other side, but it is going to take us taking
cleansing
responsibility
blood to
for
cleanse.
ourselves and taking actions that look at data and science and not just our opinions.
Well, thank, thank you very much, Mayor. And you're right. The unfortunate and really frustrating point here is why did other states have to go through this? I mean, we knew what we were dealing with. New York went down the path before. We lived exactly this. Just learn from what New York did. Learn from the numbers, learn from the data. And we knew that if
I
you
release
reopen
my pain.
recklessly, the virus was going to take off again. If you're not doing precautions, the virus was going to take off. Now, New York's problem is we have the infection coming from other states back to New York. We're worried about our infection rate going up because of people coming from other states where the infection rate is higher. We have a cluster of cases in an upstate county called Rensselaer. People came up from Georgia, they had the virus, and they infected people in New York, and then it took off. So you're on exactly the right track. Anything we can do to help, we're at a stable period now. We have the virus way down low. We went from the worst infection rate in the country to the best infection rate, the lowest. So we have a little breathing space here. Anything we can do for you that you need, any help on the testing, setting up the testing and the tracing, that is so important. And we've been through that. So you have an open offer, whatever you need, but we're also 100% behind you. And we wish you Godspeed in your health recovering. And we hope that Atlanta, under your guidance, comes back quickly. And anything we can do, we stand ready.
Thank you, Governor. And that's exactly what we need assistance with. Testing that gets people's results very quickly, and also the contact tracing, because we know that's extremely important for us to help slow the spread. So I appreciate your offer to help, and we certainly will be appreciative of that assistance.
Well, we can do that. We have, I'll arrange it with your team, but we'll put together people who've done the testing for us and the contact tracing. We actually worked with Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City. And because nobody knew what a contact tracing program was. And we worked with the former mayor who stepped up and brought Johns Hopkins to the table, and we came up with a training program and a whole software program. So I'll send a team down to Atlanta, and they can work with your people, and whatever we know and whatever we can share, we will do. In the meantime, send my regards to the former mayor there who I worked with. Send my regards to all the people at Centennial Park. When I was HUD secretary, I did a lot of work in Atlanta, a lot of good work. I have a lot of fond memories. So send my regards to everyone. I'll get that team together, and they'll come down to Atlanta as soon as it works for you. Thank you for being with us, Mayor.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Can our spirits be friends too?
Now let's speak to the mayor. Where are we? Today is day 135. Let's talk about some facts first. Where are we? 792 hospitalizations today. That is very good news. Lowest since March 18th. You look at our rate of transmission all across the board. Every region, we see good numbers. And again, we have more data than any state in the country. So we live and die by the data, and all the numbers are good. You look across New York City, the county numbers, they are all good and they are all consistent. You have a little deviation from day to day. That's statistically irrelevant, but there's all good news in the numbers across the state and across the city. Death toll for yesterday is 10 people. Again, we'd love to see that number at 0, but compared to where we have been, that is a very good place to be. You look at the 3-day average, and you see there the whole slope of what we've gone through. You see the descent, and the experts say to me, you'll never really get to 0 on the number of deaths because people die. This is a condition like pneumonia. It attacks the respiratory system. So people who are very ill can contract COVID, and it can be the cause of death. But that's where we are now. We did 51,000 tests yesterday, and it was just over 1%. So it is all good news on where we are as a state. And the numbers show that what we have done in terms of our reopening strategy and our plan has worked. We have been reopening for weeks now. Over 1 month we started reopening. And we expected, after the reopening, we expected the numbers to tick up. They haven't ticked up. They've actually gone down. So the reopening strategy has worked. New York State SMART has worked, and it shows that this nation can defeat COVID. There was no reason to have these states on the increase. New York inherited a spike. Remember where we started. We were handed this high infection rate because nobody knew the virus had come from Europe. So we started with a high spike. We had to get that spike down. The other states didn't start with a spike. They just had to stop it from increasing. And with all we did in New York and all we knew, they were just blind to the reality. And again, I want to congratulate New Yorkers who really stepped up to the plate, and they did what they had to do. And it was hard. Social distancing, close businesses, close schools, stay at home. It was hard, but they did it. We now get to the question of reopening schools. There is a state formula that will determine if it is safe to reopen schools, okay? So open schools or not, There's a state formula that determines it. There are then state guidelines as to how that school reopens, right? State formula determines if it reopens. If it reopens, the second question is how, and that will be done by state guidelines. But the question of school opening is like the question of reopening the economy. Reopening the schools, reopening the economy. It's the same conversation. And by the way, it's the exact same conversation with the President of the United States. We talked about reopening the economy, and he said, just reopen the economy. There's no reason for any of this stuff. Phases, data, masks, it's all baloney. Just reopen. Yeah, we saw how well that worked. Go ask Florida and Texas and Arizona how well that worked. On schools, what does he say? Reopen the schools. Just open them up. Don't worry. Yeah, he was wrong on the economic reopening. He's wrong on the schools reopening. Everybody wants to reopen the schools.
Every corner.
I want to reopen the schools. Everybody wants to reopen the schools. It's not do we reopen or not. You reopen if it is safe to reopen. How do you know if it's safe? You look at the data. You don't hold your finger up and feel the wind. You don't have an inspiration. You don't have a dream. You don't have an emotion. Look at the data. We test more. We have more data than any state. Look at the data. If you have the virus under control, reopen. If you don't have the virus under control, then you can't reopen, right? We're not going to use our children as a litmus test, and we're not going to put our children in a place where their health is endangered. It's that simple. Common sense and intelligence can still determine what we do, even in this crazy environment. We're not going to use our children as guinea pigs. I say to the experts, it's very simple. If I'm making the determination as to whether or not I would send my daughter to school. If it's safe, I'll send her. If it's not safe, I'm not going to send her. And you can determine that by science. So the formula is this. Schools will reopen if that region is in phase 4 and the daily infection rate remains 5% or lower over a 14-day average. Okay? You're in phase 4 and you're under 5% infection rate. That means the virus is under control. That means it's safe to reopen. And then the schools can proceed to reopening in that region. Exactly how, you look at the state guidelines. This determination will be made the first week in August. Second question is, what happens if between the first week in August and the day school opens, the virus spikes? I don't want to be in a position where we made a determination August 7th, and then the virus spikes, but we already said the schools are going to reopen. So the safety valve, there's a floor. Schools will close if the regional infection rate is above 9% on a 7-day average. Okay? So you get a green light, reopen in a region if you're in phase 4 and the infection rate is 5% or lower. If the infection rate goes over 9% on the 7-day average, that means the virus is moving rapidly and it is not intelligent to open. That's the green light and that's the red light, and it's the way we've done the economic reopening. It's purely on the numbers. Purely on the numbers. It's on the science. We'll make the first decision You look at the numbers, the week of August 1 to 7, the week, because it's a rolling 14-day average, different regions are in different positions on the 14-day average. Between August 1st, you get a green light on August 1st. Between August 1st and the day the school opens, we continue to monitor. And if the infection rate goes over 9, then we hit an emergency stop button. Okay? It's very simple. It's clear. Once you get a green light to reopen, then how you reopen, you follow the guidelines. And we leave it to the 700 school districts across the state to come up with the specific plan pursuant to those guidelines. We have done state health guidelines. The State Department of Education is doing state education guidelines, which will incorporate our health guidelines. We had a great Reimagined Education Advisory Council that did a lot of work to come up with the guidelines. Jim Malakas for me. I want to thank them all very much for the good work they did. They're education officials from all across the state. They came up with guidelines that will say the districts have to have flexible plans, there have to be safeguards, they're prioritizing safety, maximizing available space, focusing on art, career, technical education. They have to be innovative. How do you use remote learning? How do you use innovative models, best practices?